Belarus can be used as a launching pad for another attack on Ukraine, but also on Western neighbors. This is what the leader of Belarusian opposition, Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, told Euronews in the Europe conversation.
Unlike the war in Ukraine,
Tsikhanouskaya had to flee the country following the fraudulent 2020 presidential elections. This in the context of what she describes as the further Russification of Belarus. Mrs. Tsikhanouskaya, you've insisted in Brussels that the EU should keep the strong pressure and isolate the regime of Lukashenko. There are reports that after the years, the US might be trying to choose a different path and trying to soften some of the approach towards Minsk in order to drag Belarus away from Russia. Do you think this approach could work, or do you continue insisting on the fact that only strict sanctions and only isolation of the regime of Lukashenko can work?
I'm absolutely sure that only consistent policy can work with the dictators. If you change your policy in the middle, so it emboldens dictators, they think that, okay, I will wait until this politician will leave, next one, maybe more loyal will come, so we can make some deals. Of course, we insist that sanctions are instruments to influence dictators' behavior. And we can use this instrument. Of course, we can talk about softening of the sanctions, but after changes of the behavior of Lukashenko. If we see that repressions are stopped, that new detentions don't take place, when political prisoners are released, including high-profile political prisoners, so we can talk about softening of sanctions for further steps of negotiation, because our final goal is to release all people and hold free and fair elections. It's not only about releasing people, though it's priority, it's about changing of our country, and sanctions here is one of the most effective instruments.
When you say only consistent pressure and isolation could work on dictators, is that the approach also to be applied to Putin?
Putin is the same dictator who wants to subjugate countries, who needs countries to surrender, capitulation. So that's why, yeah, it's a very effective instrument, to influence Putin as well. So until the goals of democratic world and until the goals of the countries who are fighting these imperialistic ambitions are not achieved, so democratic world can help to achieve these goals through these economic instruments.
We've heard recently there is a sign of growing integration, so to say, between Russia and Belarus. There was an announcement about Belarus people living in the Russian Federation, its own citizens living in Belarus can now participate in the elections. To what extent do you see that as a further absorption of Belarus by Russian Federation?
For sure what we see in Belarus, it's a creeping occupation, and it is done with allowance of Lukashenko, who is Putin's puppet. Lukashenko is ready to sell our sovereignty, sell our independence, our country to Russia just to stay in power. And it hasn't happened like recently. We see the process of Russification. We see how Lukashenko, Putin making like deals that don't correspond to the national interests of Belarus.
But as you say, given the absence of the fair elections in Belarus, given the absence of those in Russia, and then we hear that Ukraine is pushed to hold the elections. What about this stance over who is supposed to have the fair elections?
I think it's only people of the country can demand elections. Free and fair, of course, when there is necessity. I understand the situation in Ukraine is different, it's wartime, and it's not up to third countries to push, you have to hold elections. It's demand of Ukrainian people. If they see that there is necessity or there is no necessity, so the existing president, have to listen to his people, first of all.
You've mentioned the goals of Moscow, saying that the bigger one is this de facto annexation and Russification of Belarus. Do you think this is something that might not be understood in the West, that Moscow is pursuing not just integration, not just the voting rights, not just the deployment of nuclear weapons, it's about the whole annexation?
What Putin is trying to do, it's not it's for Belarus, for example, it's not about physical annexation. It's about keeping a loyal government in power. This is what they want in Ukraine, actually, as well. I don't think that they need your land as it is, maybe separate parts of, but they want a loyal government to have like visibility of independent country, but with a government that is serving to Putin. At any moment, they can use our land, for further invasion of the European Union, for example, or just to promote their propagandistic interests. This is what they want. They want to have puppets regime in the countries. And I think that in the Western world, maybe now it's more understandable than before. I honestly have to say that we had to rediscover what Belarus is for our Western neighbors, because they thought we are like appendix of Russia, we are gray zone, and they didn't see people, nation, in Belarus. And now they see that Belarusians are standing firmly with the European principles and values, that Ukrainians are fighting and dying actually for democracy, for their rights to be part of European family of countries.
Speaking of Belarus neighbors, Volodymyr Zelensky at the Munich Security Conference issued a stark warning that Russia might be preparing an invasion using Belarus as a launch pad, somehow similar to the way Belarus territory was used in February 2022 for invasion of Ukraine. Zelensky said that Russia is preparing up to 15 divisions that could be up to 150,000 troops being trained to aggravate the situation in Belarus direction, which might be troops meant to attack NATO countries and the Baltic states. How do you assess this risk?
I would perceive these threats very seriously. Because while Lukashenko is in power, Belarusian land can be used as launching pad for attack again on Ukraine or on our Western neighbors. It's no problem for Lukashenko to serve to Putin and give our land and infrastructure, for the invasion. So that's why we're explaining it to our democratic partners that until regime is there will be constant threat to your security. We have to dismantle this regime to get rid of Lukashenko. Only in this case, Belarus will not be the source of constant blackmailing with migrants, nuclear weapon or joint drills with the Russians. Only we want to be reliable partners. And also in the Munich Security Conference, Zelensky also told that eastern border of Europe has to lay to the eastern border of Belarus.
You said that when it comes to the pressure on being put on Belarus, it is hard to also foresee what can happen as long as Lukashenko is in Belarus. Do you think it's going to be the same if, hypothetically, Putin is no longer in power? Would that also be the change?
Changes in Belarus can happen due to different venues. But what's important for us as democratic forces is that our society, our democratic movement, Europe, is prepared for these changes. Of course, something can happen in Russia, and hence it will be a weaker Lukashenko, and people will uprise again. It might be a victory of Ukraine. It also will weaken Putin and weaken Lukashenko. But the changes in Russia can start from changes in Belarus as well. Let's not forget that changes or some uprising or black swan in Belarus can raise uprising in Russia, as it happened back in 2020. So let's not connect in our heads that without changes in Russia, nothing is possible in Belarus. No, it doesn't work like this. In Belarus, it's even more easier, to achieve changes because our society is more consolidated. We have absolutely pro-European, anti-war, pro-Ukrainian, anti-Lukashenko moods, so we can be very fast and easily mobilized. Belarusians haven't changed their minds. We want to get rid of this Russian influence. We want to return to European family of countries. And if there will be a window of opportunity, people will be on the streets. People will be very active and will be very effective. So context of Russia and Belarus are very different. And I'm absolutely sure that there are more possibilities to change regime in Belarus than in Russia.
Do you think this kind of uprising by the society in Belarus could also happen rather quick? What I'm saying is that when you say if the society feels this wind of change, it might happen kind of overnight, so to say.
Our pro-democratic aspirations haven't disappeared. All these constant repressions that we are going through for almost 5 years already haven't made people to forget or to forgive or to deny their pro-European perspectives, pro-democratic. And so our movement inside the country, it of course now went mostly underground, but of course it hasn't disappeared. While Lukashenko is still detaining people every day. Every day 15, 20 people are detained because he knows that as only he stops, there will be massively people on the streets. He behaves as if still thousands of people standing in front of his palace. He's afraid of the society. And I'm absolutely sure that when people feel that this is the moment, that they have this aspiration inside. They have this desire for changes. People will be on the streets. We have to remember that people on the streets is only part of their prize and part of their resistance. And this visible quietness on the country doesn't mean that people gave up. It means that people are preparing and they will be ready when there will be possibility.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.